Welcome! Today we'll talk about hot numbers about our planet. It's a fact. Human impacts are warming our climate and changing our planet. The numbers are undeniable. Our planet is warming. Humans are responsible. The impacts are profound, but together we can fix it. Scientists agree that human impacts, including climate change, habitat destruction, and resource consumptions, are threatening the health of the natural system, upon which we all depend for our long-term well-being. Climate and sustainability issues are complex, and their impacts are far-reaching. They are also difficult to grasp and even more challenging to summarize. Distilling complex issues into a few numbers risk oversimplification, but doing so can help us to get our heads around some big concepts. Facts may never convince the deeply skeptical. For the rest of us, facts do matter. They can be an important reminder. They can startle us out of complacency. They can move us to action. With that in mind, we compiled a list of 12 numbers that provide a concise overview of the challenges we face. Use them as a personal motivator. Slip them into conversations with your friends, but try to separate science from politics, facts from emotion. Knowing that scientific facts alone aren't enough, we conclude this story with some things that all of us can do to respond to these vitally important issues. Causes. The first number is 9 billion. Earth's human population will reach 9 billion by 2050. The number of humans living on the planet didn't reach 1 billion until the year 1804. Then, in just one century, the world's population doubled, reaching 2 billion in 1927. Today, our numbers exceed 7.2 billion. 2050 population projections actually range from 9.4 billion to 10.1 billion. Educating and empowering women and providing them with access to reproductive health care typically reduces fertility and can help lower future population growth rates. This is a graph which shows the exponential growth of human population from 84 to 2054, from 1 to 9 billion, exponentially. Second number. 25 undisturbed. Only 25% of Earth's land surface is relatively free of human impacts. The human footprint extends to far corners of the planet, roads reach into wildernesses, forests fall to logging, rangeland and agriculture. This is a map of human impacts to our planet. The Wildlife Conservation Society Human's Footprint Map, shown above, combines land cover information with transportation network to reveal the spalling impact of human activities. Our global reach and ability to alter these landscapes necessitate careful stewardship of the finite natural heritage on which we all depend. Third number. 1.7 Earth. Humanity demands nearly twice as much from the planet than what its ecosystem renew. It's like using the equivalent of 1.7 Earths. People compete for the productive areas of the world to produce food, fibers and timber, to accommodate houses and roads, and to absorb waste, particularly carbon dioxide from fossil fuel burning. As this use exceeds what Earth can renew, we are depleting our planet, including changing the composition of the atmosphere, draining ice age groundwater, overfishing oceans, logging ancient forests, and losing rich soils. The map below shows how lopsided our impacts are. It's for example, the Canada's produce 7 global liters per person. United States of America, 4. And for example, China is minus 3. The majority of countries are running ecological deficits. These deficits occur when a population's total resource consumption exceeds the biological capacity of their area. A national ecological deficit means a nation is importing biocapacity through trade, liquidating ecological assets, or emitting carbon dioxide waste into the atmosphere. Example: the United States has abundant natural resources, biocapacity, but its high rate of consumption outstrips that capacity. Thus the deficit. Only about 50 countries, meanwhile, have ecological reserves, meaning their biocapacity exceeds their population's consumption. Next number. 420 parts per million. Carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere are at their highest in 15 million years. Ice in Greenland and Antarctica have trapped samples of ancient atmospheres. Extracting and analyzing ice cover reveals a pulsing planetary heartbeat that shows how carbon dioxide levels have waxed and waned with ice ages until now. In the planetary equivalent of the blink of an eye, humans have supercharged the atmosphere with heat-trapping CO2. We've barely begun to see the impacts of our unintentional and dangerous planet-wide experiment. Consequences: 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit. The Earth's average temperature has risen 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit. It's just about 1 degree Celsius since 1880. With the exceptions of 1998, 18 of 19 warmest years in the 136-year record of have occurred since 2001. Graphing average global surface temperature relative to the 1951 to 1980 average reveals a striking and undeniable planet-wide warming. That this trend will continue into the future without doubt. The question is whether greenhouse gas emissions can be reduced rapidly enough to avoid catastrophic impacts on cropland, cities, and ecosystems. The maps show projected temperature change by 2050, assuming global emissions are not curtailed. The Arctic will suffer the greatest temperature increase. Large swathes of Russia, Canada, and Alaska could warm by over 9 Fahrenheit. (70 to 30% poorer). Global warming is exacerbating economic inequality. A 2019 Stanford University study found that from 1961 to 2010, global warming decreased the wealth per person in the world's poorest countries by 70 to 30%. In addition, the gap between the groups of nations with the highest and lowest economic output per person is now approximately 25% larger than it would have been without climate change. For the most part, wealthier countries are in Earth's temperature zones, where temperature increases have a less severe impact and can even be beneficial. In cold countries, according to the studies, a little bit of warming can help. The opposite is true in places that are already hot. Climate change, as with many natural phenomena, has a greater adverse impact of marginalized populations. The affluent people who are responsible for the bulk of greenhouse gas emissions are suffering far less from their impacts than low-income population that tend to be comprised of minorities. 8 inches. Global sea levels have risen 8 inches in the past century. Retreating ice sheets induced by the global temperature spike are causing sea levels to rise. The rate of change in the last 2 decades is nearly double that of the last century, and accelerating decade by decade. The map shows number of people in major coastal cities exposed to flooding. Sea level rise and increased flooding from coastal storms and putting millions of people at risk. This map shows the 20 cities with the largest population exposed to coastal flooding. By 2017, more than 100 million people are projected to be vulnerable to flooding in these cities alone. 30% increase. Ocean surface acidity has increased by about 30% since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. As humans emit more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, increasing amount of CO2 filter into the oceans. Every year, about 2 billion additional tons of carbon dioxide are absorbed by the upper layer of the oceans. The result is that seawater becomes more acidic. Among the effects, mollusk and reef-building organisms that are key to the health of marine ecosystems become increasingly unable to build their shells, threatening their survival. Changes in ocean surface acidity 1961 to 2018. More lighter area and more change. 90% decline. If current trends continue, up to 90% of Earth's coral reefs may be gone by mid-century. Coral face a double threat: warming sea surface temperatures and increased acidity. Rising temperatures have caused a dramatic increase in coral bleaching events. Lighter hue on the maps below represents greater current risk of coral bleaching. Within the billions of tiny coral animals that build vast reef system are some biotic algae. When temperatures spike, the algae are expelled by the corals, turning them a ghostly white. Corals can survive a handful of these events, but repeated bleaching is fatal. The loss of these diverse and productive reefs will have devastating impacts on marine ecosystem and the millions of people whose livelihoods depend on them. 30% reduction. Every 10 years, the extent of Arctic Sea ice in September declines by 12.8%. Arctic Sea reaches its minimum extent each September. That extent is declining at a rate of 12.8% per decade relative to the 1981 to 1210 average. The graph above shows the average monthly Arctic Sea ice extent each September since 1979, derived from satellite observations. The 2012 extent is the lowest yet recorded. The animation below is based on satellite observations and shows minimum Arctic ice extent since 1979. 58% decline. Vertebrate animal populations declined on average by 58% between 1970 and 2012. Less than half of the populations of animals with backbones that existed in 1970 remained in 2012, and declines continue. The biggest declines are in freshwater vertebrates. On average, they have shown an 81% decline in that time period. Not only are animal populations declining, but whole species are going extinct. More 26,000 known species are threatened with extinction. Species extinction rates are 100 to 1000 times higher than normal or background level. It's 25% mammals, 14% birds, and 40% amphibians. A quarter of mammal species are threatened with extinction. It's about 1 in 7 bird species, and more than a third of amphibian species face potential extinction. Climate change as threat multiplier. The impacts of climate change are distributed unevenly. That's true geographically. Temperatures are increasing more in the Arctic than for the planet as a whole, and it's true demographically as well. The disadvantaged, the disenfranchised, the underprivileged will suffer, and are suffering far more from the impacts of warming climate than affluent people who can afford to be more insulated from them. Fundamental issues such as poverty, hunger, lack of access to clean water, and availability of health care are all made more severe by climate change. This is the sad irony that those of who are wealthier and contributing the most to the warming climate yet are suffering its effect the least. Consensus. 100% consensus. 100% of actively publishing climate scientists agree. It is extremely likely that climate warming trends over the past century are due to human activities. A review of more than 11,000 research papers published in the first 7 months of 2019 indicated that the scientific consensus had grown to 100%. A long-term consensus among scientists has now reached unanimity. Previously, a group of 1,030 independent scientific experts from countries all over the world, under the auspices of the United Nations, had concluded there are more than 95% probability that human activities over the past 15 years have warmed our planet. This graph summarizes a series of studies covering the degree of consensus within the scientific community on human-induced climate change. The consensus among scientists is overwhelmingly that human activities are the primary cause of climate change. Conclusion. We all need to take action. Climate change isn't the fault of some distant village. All of us contribute to the greenhouse gas emissions that are changing Earth's climate, and all of us can help alleviate the problem. We can speak out loud as we can. As climate scientist Catherine Hayhoe says, talk about it, advocate for change at every level from your family to your school, or business or organization, or to your elected representatives. As much as we can work as individuals to reduce our climate impact, governments and large corporations have a far greater effect on climate and will be much more likely to make reforms if we put pressure on them. Thank you.